Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you just joined, I'm going to post a link to this Google slide presentation on the chat. And you guys can keep this as a copy for your own resource. If this is your first time joining me, welcome. My name is Josue Sanchez. I'm the program manager for ComputerWise Kids. And today we're going to be talking about Google Sheets. Now, if you did open up this link to the presentation and you want to make a copy of this for yourself, hover over to File and then click on that and select Make a Copy of the entire presentation. This will make a copy in your Google Drive that you can access whenever it's convenient for you. Or if you prefer, you can download a copy of this as a PowerPoint or as a PDF. Just please keep in mind that if you select either of these two options, there may be some formatting issues. So I always recommend to just make a copy of the whole presentation so it's ready for you whenever you need to have it on the cloud. Now, we'll be covering Google Sheets, and we'll dive into the basics of Google Sheets, which is very similar to Excel if you used in the past. Some of the functions are, translate from one program to the other, but we'll be focusing on Sheets just because it's part of the Google suite, and it's built into your Google account, into your Google Drive. And let me go over just the different topics we'll be covering today. So different uses for Google Sheets, how to access and create a new Google Sheet document. We'll talk about the terminology a little bit, vocabulary that is used when talking about spreadsheet programs, how to enter data and how to format the data. We'll talk about columns, rows, and cells and how to work within them, formulas or functions, and how to have multiple sheets in one document, and then finally how to filter the data. So it's quite a lot of information, and I've done my best to kind of break this up into different sections throughout this presentation. And so you can make a copy of this to just kind of go back and use it for review as you need to. Okay. So now let's talk about uses for Google Sheets. Google Sheets can be used for a gradebook. It can be used for scheduling. You can create monthly or weekly planners on here. You can do some record keeping or some data analysis or presentation of data. And also has, of course, a lot of applications in finance or business. And there's a lot more that we can actually do with this. So we are going to just scratch the surface of the possibilities. You can take a whole semester on just learn how to use spreadsheet programs, but we'll try to cover enough today to get you started with it. Now, the first thing you'll need to know how to do is access Google Sheets, and you can do this a couple of ways. First of all, you have to be logged into your Google account, whether that's a personal Google account or whether it's an LAUSD, your LAUSD single sign-on account. Either will work. You can go into your Drive, which is what I have here. And from here, you can go into New and select Google Sheets. Clicking on Google Sheets will create a blank spreadsheet document. But if we hover over here to the right, this little arrow, you see there's also the option to select from a template. Okay. So I'm going to just showcase some of these templates that are built in Google Sheets already, and then we'll come back and open up a blank spreadsheet. So when I select from a template, it's going to just make sure that I've selected the correct folder for this sheet. If you're in your Drive, it will just automatically place it inside your Drive. I'm currently inside of my Google Sheets folder that I created, so it just wants to confirm that that's where it should create the spreadsheet. So I'm going to click Create. Okay. And the general templates you see here, we have some for education. These are categorized here. So education, you have a log for attendance or even a gradebook sample, an assignment tracker. Okay. We have a to-do list. Okay. And then you have some more advanced stuff like budgets and calendars, travel planners. You can see there's quite a range here of templates at your disposal. One of the ones that I like to use is the to-do list. And if you are thinking about incorporating Google Sheets into your classroom, giving the students a checklist of items they have to complete might be beneficial to you. And you can do this with the to-do list. So if we click on to-do list, just showcase this template for a little bit. You'll notice that it doesn't extend on beyond this third column here, this column C. And then we can just delete this here. And it has these check boxes that you can use to check off tasks or assignments as you complete them. Okay, so if we want the students to post a reply to the prompt. Okay, and maybe this is a task for Monday or today. Let's just do today, 05-28. And then they can come in here, see what they have to do for this date or for the week, and then just kind of check it off, press that checkbox, and it crosses it out for them. So something that you may want to incorporate at some point with your students. So let me go back now and take a look at a regular spreadsheet. Oh yes, let me post that link to the slide one more time. There you go. Okay, so let's close this out. And the other way, let me show you a quick way to also get to spreadsheets is by going into this waffle icon, the Google Apps icon, and just clicking on Sheets here. So this will take you to Google Sheets a page where you can see all of the Google Sheets you currently have, and also take a look at some of the templates and start one from here as well. So I'm going to select blank to just get a blank spreadsheet open here. And before we go any further, I just want to explain some of the terminology that we use with spreadsheets in case you're not familiar with it. The spreadsheet is a series of rows and columns. So each column has a name by the letter that is above it. So here we have column A, column B, and column C, and so forth. If I take this and drag it over to the right, you see it extends all the way out to Z, and we can add more if we need to. Then on the left side, you'll see we have numbers, right? And if I click on a number, it highlights a row from A to Z. So these are rows, and their names are the numbers that you see on the left. Okay. So we have columns, we have rows, and wherever they intersect, we call those cells. Okay. And the name of each cell is the column that it's in, followed by the row that it's in. So this would be cell A1, right? Or you would have B2. So that's just a quick little knowledge of terminology. And you know, usually we describe positions on a spreadsheet by either the column or the row or the cell that they are in. Now, just with as you would with any other Google document, you do need to provide it with a name. Okay, so right now it's an untitled spreadsheet. It's just going to be my sample sheet. And if you follow my cursor down here to the bottom, you're going to see a couple of things down here towards the bottom of the page. You have a title, a little tab that says Sheet 1. This is because we can add multiple sheets to one document, and I'll show you how to do that, or we'll play around with that a little bit later on. You have the ability to view all the sheets if you do have multiple rows. Such as if you were to be keeping track of grades by category, whether it's writing, reading comprehension, certain type of math, you can create spreadsheets or a spreadsheet for each of those categories and then populate the grades in there. Okay, and just kind of have one grade book, but then have a different sheet for each category. This plus sign will add a sheet for you. Okay, so this is a quick way to add a sheet. And then you also will see some formatting tools up here at the top, which are kind of basic for all of the Google Suite programs, such as Google Slides, and Google Docs as well. Quick reminder, if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat, and I'll do my best to address them as they come up. We will also have a question and answer section towards the end of this presentation, in case you prefer to wait till then. So we talked about templates and some of the terminology. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and do a demonstration of entering data. Okay, now, if you are thinking of making a grade book or keeping track of scores, the first thing you'd probably want to populate on here would be first and last name. And what we can do is set up our spreadsheet so that we have a column dedicated for first name, a column dedicated for last name, and then each column after that could be an assignment that we've assigned in our classroom here. So we can just simply click inside a cell and start typing in. We have first name. I can click on the cell next to it and type in last name. Now, one of the most common questions we get with spreadsheets is how do you format this to make it look a little bit more presentable? Maybe make it stand out a little bit more. Well, any formatting that you do on Google Docs and Sheets can apply here as well, with some exceptions. If we click on a cell, let's say we wanted to center this information. We can go to the Align tool, the horizontal align, click on there, and select center, just like you would with Docs or Google Slides. But the change will only happen on that selected cell. You can see that this cell over here, B1, is still left aligned. It's not centered like this cell. If I wanted to create or format multiple cells at once, I would have to click and drag and select multiple cells. So I can click here, drag it over, and you'll see that these two cells are now highlighted, and I can then go back here and set the formatting, right, my horizontal alignment to center, and it will apply it for both of these cells. This goes with any other font formatting feature or even cell formatting. So if we do bold, we can do it for both or multiple cells at the same time. Now, sometimes we might want to modify the height or the width of these cells or rows or columns just to fit our data. Maybe the last name is too long and it doesn't fit on here, and we need to kind of stretch this out. Well, there's a couple ways to do this here. So let me just go ahead and type in my last name. I'm going to type in Sanchez. And even though it fits comfortably, let me increase the font size. I'm going to increase it to, let's do 18. Oh, that still fits. Let's try 24. Okay. So here we have an example of a text or information that actually went into the adjacent cell here. Okay. And this is an ideal, especially when you have a lot of numbers or a lot of information. You need to keep it organized and sorted. And one of the ways we can do this is by modifying the width of our cells or even the height, width of our columns or the height of our rows. So there's some quick ways to do this. If you look in between B and C, there's a vertical line. And if I hover over that vertical line, you'll see that my cursor turns into a line, right? An arrow or a line that's pointing in both directions. Well, I can click and drag and change the width of my cells by doing so. Okay, so clicking and dragging and moving this around. Now, just keep in mind that all your modifications will be on the right side of the column. So what that means is if I take this, this line here and I want to shorten column B, thinking that I can just click and drag it and move it over. If I do that, it actually expands column A. So if you do want to shorten something or stretch it out, either way, it's always done by the right side of that column. Okay? Always on the right side. In a similar fashion, for the rows, we can go in between two numbers and click and drag down or up Just note again that if you will have to select the line that's beneath the number every time to modify that row. You can't see, you're having a hard time seeing the bottom of the spreadsheet here. Let me see if I can move this up. 1 second. Okay, so I've shrunk it down a little bit. Hopefully you can see it now. The bottom of the spreadsheet here. Okay. So that's a quick way for us to modify the column width or the row height. And just keep in mind, if you want to do it for one cell, this isn't really possible just because of the way that the spreadsheet is connected. We have, every cell belongs to a column and every cell belongs to a row. And so we would have to modify those settings for the entire row or the entire column. Now, there is a way that we can combine these to form one larger cell. So let me undo some of this and just show you that if I did want to merge or combine two cells, let me see if I can do this here. I'm just going to add my first name and my last name. And let's say I wanted to combine these two things together. I can highlight both of these cells, okay? And then there's a special tool over here called the Merge Cells tool. It looks like two arrows kind of pointing towards each other. And if I click on that, it will actually combine them. Now it's gonna give me a warning because I have information on both of these cells. It's gonna say that only the top leftmost value is going to be kept, okay? So you'd ideally merge these cells beforehand. So I'm just gonna select okay. You'll see that my two cells have actually now become one larger cell. Okay, so that's a way to get around that. If you do need a bigger space and you don't want to modify either the row height or the column width, you can click and drag and combine cells to make something larger. As another example here, I'm going to delete my headings and I'm just going to type in student name. Does that all fit in there? Oh, it does. Okay, let's do spreadsheet presentation. Okay, so I can actually highlight multiple, not just two, but multiple cells, 1, 2, 3, let's go 5 across, and combine this to make a title for my data. Okay. And then I can come in here and again, do some basic font formatting as you would with Word or slides. You can make this larger. You can change the font style. All of those settings apply here as well. One of the other things you can do to kind of make this presentation maybe a little bit easier to read is apply some color to the cells. And so we can do this with the fill color tool, the little paint bucket next to this capital A. And if we click on that, you see we have some options for some colors, and we can select one that's best suited for our data and use that to kind of make it a little bit easier to read. If you did have, for instance, first and last name, and let me just show a sample spreadsheet that I have here. So if you had something like this, where you have, you're keeping track of scores, and you have multiple students, going across multiple columns could be difficult. And so adding color to each row would make it easier to follow and just kind of, follow that line all the way through. So that's a quick tip. If you do have multiple columns and a lot of data, providing a little bit of color just to make it stand out and keep track of that row is very helpful. This recording is going to be up on our on our YouTube channel. It's going to be up on our YouTube channel. So after this meeting is over, it's going to be uploaded and you'll be sent a link to that as well. If you're just joining us, let me go ahead and just post that link to this Google Slide presentation. We haven't gone in too deep into spreadsheets, but you can go ahead and click on this link and just kind of view the first few slides, and that should help you catch up. We mostly went over, oh, there's a little typo here, mostly went over just identifying columns, rows, and how to change the width and some formatting of spreadsheets. How can I pick and choose rows for color? Okay, that's a good question. So let's say I wanted to skip every other row. So I wanted one row white and then the other one with a splash of color. So I can click and drag and select this, this row of this row, row 3, and go into the fill color tool and then select a color. Typically, what you would do is you'd select one of these top colors, these top shades, just because they're a splash of color. It's not too dark so that it would affect the readability of the text. And so if we click on this first one here, light orange, you can see it adds the color for the entire row that I selected here. Now, if I did click on 3, let's say that instead of just clicking and dragging and highlighting, I clicked on number 3 here, you see this extends all the way out to column Z. Okay, and so if I then go in here and select the color, it will do it for the entire spreadsheet. Okay, that may not be what you want to do most of the time. And so typically I would just say to click and drag, highlight that row you want to have a splash of color, and then apply that, that color. Now, if you're not familiar with this tool over here, this little rolling like paint roller, this is a format painter. This is a very useful tool when you want to apply the same pattern of formatting across multiple things such as paragraphs or pages, or in this case, cells. If I want to keep this pattern of, one row white, one row slightly colored, I can actually highlight the entire thing here. Okay, again, click and drag and highlight the entire thing, and then go into this format painter. Okay, and now I'll select the rows I want to apply this format to. So I can click from 4 all the way down to, let's say we want to go to 15, and then I'll let it go. You can see it copied over that style all the way down. Okay, so format painter is a quick, it's actually a very quick way to just apply this throughout multiple cells here. Can you delete the cells, or does it have to go all the way to Z? No, you can actually, yes, go in here and delete columns and rows. So if you were here for the beginning and you saw that to-do list that we showed earlier, it only went up to column C, and so the rest were actually deleted. You can do that by right-clicking on the column and selecting delete column. Now, it won't show that it deleted, for instance, here column H, because we have additional columns to the right of it. What it does is it'll move I to H, and then everything will go down or go up one, if you will. But if I highlight across, for example purposes here, if I go from I all the way to Z, and then I right click, I can delete columns I through Z here. And that way my spreadsheet stops at H. Okay, and you can do this with rows as well. You can click and drag all the way down. Now, I wouldn't do it necessarily with rows, just because with rows it does go up to 1,000. So just kind of keep this in mind. You could click here, I suppose, and then take your cursor and drag this scroll bar all the way down to the 1,000. You can hold the shift and it will select everything, and then delete it if you really needed to. But most of the time you could just simply stay up here and work on it without deleting the entire set of rows here. Okay. All right, so let me just cover some other formatting here. Oh, something to mention about pink formatting. If you do select, for instance, a specific font style or like font formatting like bold or strike through or any of these settings, font color, if they're applied on these rows that you select to copy with Pink Formatter, it will apply to all the other cells you select. Okay, so it's not just color that gets copied over, it's everything that was formatted in those cells. All right, here, let me go in here. Oh, so I talked a little bit about data and formatting, or actually formatting more than anything, but the types of data you can use here. So you can add in text, you can add in numbers, dates, a specific time. I did kind of showed earlier that you can type in text just like first name, last name. Let's say we have an assignment here. Call this assignment number 1. And then I wanted to populate the scores. I can add in numbers here as well. So we can do 85, for instance. We can do decimals, 75.2. You can keep adding decimals. You can do dollar amounts, $1.50. You can do dates, 05/28/2020. Okay, so all of this can be used percentages, right? 98%. It can be used and populated on here. Now, you have some additional formatting options for each of these elements. Okay, so I know it might not fit in with assignments, but just for demonstration purposes here, I'm going to show you a little bit about formatting each of these data types. So if you follow my cursor up here, up to the top, right now we have a whole number of 85. But you'll notice that I have this option here. It's a little decimal and then an arrow pointing to the left or to the right. So I can either decrease the decimal places or increase them. If I increase, you'll see it'll add a 0.0, and I can keep adding this as needed. Okay. Here we have 75.2. If I decrease the decimal places, it will round it to the nearest whole number. Okay. If I had, let's for instance, 72.25, okay, you notice because I'm only up to one decimal place, it went ahead and rounded that up to 75.3. Same thing with dollar amounts. You can also kind of increase or decrease that as well. With dates, you have other formatting options available to you. So let me see here. If I click on the date and I go over to this 1, 2, 3, this is more formats. I can click and select, we have quite an array of options here. You have some accounting stuff, finance stuff. Then we have date, time, date and time, duration. And again, we have more formats available. So you can do more in dates and times or currency or a custom format. So the way you present this can be customized to your needs. Sometimes we don't, we want to enter a number, but we don't want the spreadsheet to treat that number as a number. We want to treat it as a text, for instance, such as I did here. We have assignment 1. I don't necessarily want the whole cell to be treated as a number. I just want to add number 1 for my title here. If it does give you an issue where it starts to treat it as a number or as a date, where you don't want that to happen, you just want to have regular text, that option is also available. So if we go back to more formats, you see we have plain text. So if you don't want to display it in a particular way, such as percentages or any of these other options, you just want the text. Okay, you can just go in here and select plain text, and it will treat it as if it were just regular text. Yes, the total and sum and averages, that's one of the most useful tools or parts of spreadsheets, is using it to do quick calculations, right? So let me move over a little bit here to my sample data. Okay. And what the question on the chat is asking about is something like this, where we have these averages. So it will take a sum or an average of the assignments here. If you did want a total, I can also show you that. And then we'll also talk about some sorting and some filtering options that are available with Google Sheets here. So let me just do a total as an example first. So I'm just going to type in a series of numbers here. Let me just make sure that all of this has been set to number. Okay. And we'll just do whole numbers for the purpose of this example. Okay. Okay, so just a series of 5 numbers here. Now, if I wanted to get a sum of all of these values, I'd have to use something called a formula. Now, formula is just a quick way of, it's kind of like a shorthand or a short way of assigning a value to a cell without actually doing the calculations yourself. So if I wanted to get a sum here of these values, okay, all formulas are going to start off with the equal symbol. Okay. So equals, and actually Google Sheets is pretty good about predicting what you want to do with your data. You notice I just pressed the equal symbol and already it is giving me a suggestion. It says suggested based on the data. So it tries to guess for me a little bit and says, do you want a sum? Yes, I do want a sum. I'm gonna just type it in for demonstration purposes, but this would be a quick way to just select or have this function to add up all of these numbers and return a sum. So I just want to explain the method of coming up with this formula. So we want equals sum. This is going to be in capital letters. Okay, equals sum, and then we want to give it the starting cell and the ending cell. It's going to be inside of parentheses and a colon in between. So let me open up a parentheses. My first cell, where I have a numeric value here, is C3. So again, I type in C3. And then I can add a colon to say, I want you to go from C3 all the way to C7. C7. Close that parentheses and then press the enter or return key, and it will give me my total here. So if I click on this cell, you're going to notice up here, this is what is actually typed into that cell. Okay, I didn't type in 337. I typed in the formula that I wanted this the spreadsheet to do. I wanted to add up all these numbers and return that sum. So this is a more advanced way of getting a sum. If you wanted to add up, for instance, 2 numbers, let me say 85 here and 79. And I'm going to do it on this cell for demonstration purposes. By the way, all of this is actually in that presentation. So I do have the formulas for sum, for averages, and how to do some other math operations that I'll showcase in a little bit here. So if you wanted to add up just 2 numbers, I can just say equals this cell, which is C3, plus this cell, which is D3. Press that enter return key, and that's a quick way of doing just 2 values. If I, of course, if I had, 100 numbers or, 25, 30 numbers, some would make this significantly easier. Okay, but if it's just 2, I can just add up those 2 cells, C3 plus D3. And what I want to do is show you that if these values change, these cells will change as well. So if I change my 85 to a 90, you'll notice this number has updated and this number has updated as well. Okay, so one of the benefits of using formulas is that it will update as you update your data. Okay, so quick way of just kind of keeping that total without having to do that calculation over and over again. Now you can also do some other simple math operations such as subtraction. So you can, another way of selecting the cell, by the way, is you can just click on it and it will add it to your formula. So that might be easier for you, depending on how your spreadsheet is arranged. Okay, so you can click and you can subtract these 2. just to show off the rest here, we have this one would multiply it by the way, multiplication is the asterisk, okay? And then we'll multiply it by that empty cell 0. If I did change this to a 5, that will update. And then we have the division here. So if I wanted to, let me update this first. We'll add a 7 equals the cell slash is the division symbol here. Okay. And again, you can modify this as a decimal value. You can decrease the number of decimal places or increase that as well. Okay. So this was sum, but let me showcase now the average. Maybe you want to get an average of all the scores that are for a particular assignment or just a general overall score here. So instead of using the sum function, I want to do an average. Okay, average. And we're going to say this is going to equal. Now, again, it reads kind of what I'm doing here. It knows that I typed up average to the left here, and it is suggesting to take an average of these scores. Okay, so again, Google tries its best to help you out. It tries to guess what you're doing. Sometimes it's not exactly what you want to do, but in this case, it picked the right suggestion. I'm going to go ahead and just click on this and then press the Enter key, and you can see it returns now an average of these scores. Let me look at my presentation just to make sure we didn't skip over anything. Oh, yes, so this ribbon, the ribbon tools, the formatting tools. We have data formatting, which are these numbers here. You have the currency, percentage, decimal places, and other formatting options. You have text formatting, size, bold, color, all of that. Some cell formatting with the cell color, the fill color, the border. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. If we click and drag here, we can add a solid border around our cells. Might make it easier to read. We talked about merging cells and then aligning horizontal align. You can also do a vertical alignment. If this were longer or taller, I can then go in here to my vertical alignment and center it that way as well. Okay. Oh, text wrapping. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about text wrapping. So if I have a very long, we'll just add in here just a couple of names. If I have something that's very long here, and it's not staying within the boundary of that column, and I wanted to stay within that boundary, I can use something called text wrapping to make it fit. And what this will do, it will actually resize my row so that my data all fits inside of that space, inside of the width that's in that column there. Okay. You can also change the positioning or the rotation of your text. If instead of assignment 1, because I feel this is too wide, and my numbers are very narrow here, so my column is a lot, more wide than what I need it to be, I can I can actually rotate this text. So I can go over here to text rotation and say whether I want it at an angle or whether I want it vertically up, vertically down. There's quite a few options here. If you are doing grades, if you're using this for grade, this one might be easiest. It takes up the less width, and so you can have multiple assignments on there without having to use that much space. So, you can change the orientation of it just by selecting, rotate up or rotate down as well. All right, let's see here. Spreadsheet tools we're going to get to in a little bit. So this is going to be sorting and filtering data. Columns, rows, and cells. We talked about resizing. column width and column height. And I have some images here that are actually little animations that will demonstrate how to do each of these things. Okay, so sometimes we want to keep, excuse me, we want to keep certain data, certain information up at the top. Let me switch over here now, and let's say I had, you know, let's say my rows were a little bit larger, and I had, you know, 25 students, and I needed to scroll up and down, but I still wanted to see my headings. I want to see assignment 1 up at the top, or I want to see what, you know, each of these columns is. We can freeze the columns so that when I scroll up and down, that row, I'm sorry, yeah, we can freeze columns and rows. That row in this case will always stay visible to me, even if I scroll up and down through the rest of the spreadsheet. Okay, we do this by freezing rows, and there's a quick way of doing this. And okay, let me undo this here. Okay, so up in this corner, this top left corner, before column A and before row 1, we have these 2 gray bars. They're a little bit thicker than the rest of the lines you'll see here. These are can be used to set your limit as far as which row or which column you want to always have visible. So if you always want to, let's say, be able to view the student's first and last name, you have multiple assignments that go all the way to, you know, K or L or Z, and you want to scroll through them without losing track of first and last name. So you can click on the right side here of this gray bar. You can click and drag it over and let it go after B. Okay, you'll see a thicker line here separating B and C. Okay, that's because A and B are now frozen, meaning they will always be visible to me even if I scroll all the way over. Okay, I will always see A and B. And similarly, you can also do this with your column, with your row, and you can freeze the first row so you always see the headings of each assignment here. Okay, so no matter how you scroll, these things are always visible to you. Yes, it can alphabetize columns and rows. So let me do that example right now, actually. We have here a list of students, demonstration purposes, right? Just a random list of students. And if I wanted to sort this by last name, let's say, I can highlight my data. Okay. Now, actually, let me, yeah, there we go. We're gonna highlight the data. I'm not gonna select the average in this example. Just highlight the entire data here. And then you'll notice up at the top, we have a data menu. Okay, so if I click on data, you see the first couple of options are gonna be sort sheet and sort range. If I select sort sheet, it's going to sort the entire worksheet. So all rows and all columns. And it's gonna sort it by, in this case, whatever's on column A, and it's gonna alphabetize it. Now, this is not ideal. Let me show you. If I click here, you notice that even though I didn't select assignments or average, it just sorted everything anyways. And even if we select sort range, you see it will sort my titles here, my headings. I don't want that to happen. I just want it to sort the student's name, and I want to sort it by last name. So what I can do here is go down a little bit and select sort range, not this sort range by column, but just sort range. And I can let Google Sheets know that my data has a header row. Okay, and that will tell it that this first row is nothing but headers and it should not sort that row. Okay, and here, once I do that, you'll see instead of having column A, column B, and so forth, I have now the headings to choose from. So I can now sort by first name, by last name, by different assignment, by average. I'm gonna select the last name here and I want from A to Z and press the sort button. And you see now this, all of the values right? And this was important. I had to select the entire set of values because otherwise it would just rearrange this one column. Right? So we have to select everything, and then it is now sorted by last name. So this is an alphabetical order from A to Z. Now, let me show you a few more options you have available to you here. So under sort range, we can have, oh, I didn't select the other one, excuse me. Here we go. So under sort range, you can have, you can sort first by last name, and let's say you have two students with the same last name. You can then go back in here, add another sort column, and then do first name. Okay, and you can keep adding this as you need to. So you can select multiple ways of sorting. So you can first sort by last name, then sort by first name. Maybe you know, instead of last name, you want average. You know, just depends on what your data needs. Okay, I'm gonna press cancel on here. Now the other thing we can do is filter the data. So let's say I wanted to only view information for students who scored over 65 on one of the assignments, let's say the quiz, so anything over 65. So again, I'm going to highlight my data here and go up to data, and this time I'm going to select create a filter. Okay, so when I click create a filter, what you'll notice is you have these icons here next to each of my headings. Okay, and I can click on this icon, and it will provide me some options of how I can sort the data or how I can filter the data. Now you can make it so that you only view any score that is, for instance, 54 or 62, just that one score, or exclude them. But if we want to view, for instance, everybody who scored over 65, we have to add what's called a condition. Now, if I click here on filter by condition, you'll notice the first option is none. So right now it is not doing any type of filtration on this data. It's just you're able to view everything. So if I click on where it says none, we have options. We have, as long as it's not empty, if it contains certain words, or if it's exactly certain words. We have some date ranges option here. Or we have greater than, right? So we're now getting into numerical options. So I'm going to select greater than, and I want everything greater than 65. I'm going to scroll down and press OK. And you see that now I only see the students who scored over 65 on this quiz. Okay. And you can keep filtering as you need to. So let me undo this and select none. Okay, so we see all the data again. Let's say you only wanted to view, for instance, I know somebody who kept track of the student scores on a spreadsheet, but then when it was parent conferences, they wanted to pull up the spreadsheet and only view or only show one student's scores. So you can use filters for this. So you can go in here and select, let's do last name. And I'm going to clear everything so that nothing is selected. And I only want to select this first last name. And then we'll press OK. And so I didn't select the average. So let me just delete this average real quick. Okay, so here we have only that student scores showing up. Okay. And you can do this, you know, go in here and clear it, and it will bring up, oh, select all. It will bring up your students again. Okay, yes, so if you want a sum of the number of students in your class, yes, that's a good question. So actually down here, I'm gonna skip down to formulas. Since formulas is the major part of Google Sheets, right? It's how to make your life a little bit easier, how to collect data and have just some of the things automated for you. So we talk about math operations, sum function, average function, and then we get into count, okay? So count will return the number of items in the data set. So this could be, the count from, here we have the numeric count. We have count if also. Okay, so there's different conditions we can use with count to return data, such as how many people have selected. If you're running a business that keeps track of t-shirt sizes, you're looking for all the number of large sizes, then you can have equals the count if something is equal to L. So here, let me show the count option here. So we're going to say equals count. Okay, count if. Let's say I want the number of students who scored, over 80. So count if, and here it says range. So I'm going to select all of this, and then greater than. Okay, and here, this is a little bit more advanced. Okay, so you'll have to spend some time getting a little bit comfortable with the formulas here. I do have a sample that you can refer to. Not 20, let's do 70. Okay, and here we have 5. And that tells me that 5 students in 5 of my students scored over 70 on this assignment. So if you wanted to do a count, count from 8. Here. Now this is actually a 0 because it was not able to count any numbers. Okay, so we have count for numbers. Count if not empty is another one, I believe. Count if I have to double check here. So yeah, I don't know it off the top of my head right now, but there is a way to return the number of count of items that were added to a specific column. Most of the time it is used to keep track of different criteria like count if this is equal to medium, count if this is greater than a number. So that's typically what that function is used for. If you do have a question about how to just sum up text or items that were added in, please message me and then I will help you figure that out. Okay. Okay, so I did also want to show you that you can add multiple spreadsheets to your Google Sheet here. So this is one sheet and I've titled it Math Scores. Let me just undo some of the changes I have here. Okay. If you do want to rename a sheet, you can click on this little triangle pointing downward and you can select rename. And then you can come in here and modify that field. Okay, instead of having just sheet 1 or sheet 2, you can add a name that it's actually meaningful to you. If you do want to add a new sheet, you can press this plus sign and it will create a new spreadsheet here for you. This is a blank sheet. Now, sometimes you don't want to start off with a blank sheet. You do have a list of students and maybe you want to carry that over. So you can click on that same triangle where we renamed this sheet and we can duplicate it. So we can select duplicate and then change this value and maybe modify some of the fields here. Okay. Some other options that you can do is you can actually color coordinate this to make it look a little bit nicer, maybe visually easier to keep track of. So maybe you want your math scores to be color red. And if this were, let me just rename it. Let's say this was reading. You can go in here and change it to a different color. And so visually you can just, instead of reading the title, just quickly see which color it is and click on that. This is helpful when you have multiple sheets, as long as you can keep a separate color for each. You can also delete the sheet if you need to. If you do delete the sheet, it will warn you beforehand. Are you sure you want to do this? You press OK to confirm, or you can cancel out. Okay. Or you can also hide a sheet. So if you want to, you feel like you have too many sheets going on right now and you want to hide some or just not be accessible, you can hide it temporarily, you see. And then it says use the view menu to unhide the sheets. So if I click here on all sheets, okay, this icon right here, these bars, I can then view that missing sheet reading. Okay, so that's how I would bring it back. So we can hide it through the little triangle down here at the bottom, and we can bring it back with all sheets. Okay. You can also copy sheets to other spreadsheets or start a new spreadsheet with it. That's a little bit more advanced. I'll let you guys kind of play around with that and figure that one out if you're comfortable with it. So there are some other options available to you here. If you want a full list of formulas that you can use, you can go over here to the functions button. It's the very last one on the side here. And here you'll see all of the ones that are available. There's quite a few. Most of them you won't use, but if you do want to find one, whether it's a specific way of counting or filtering or something like that, you can go in here and just look it up. Google does have a database where you can go in there and type up a function, and it will show you some examples of how to use it. So if you are comfortable doing that and doing a little bit of self-study, I'd recommend you do that so you can learn about the different functions here. Okay, and then we talked already about sorting and filtering data. So that was a very quick kind of overview of all the different things that Google Sheets can be used for and some of the functions. We went a little bit into filtering and into sorting data, and then even some formatting options, how to make it a little bit easier to read, how to add borders and color, and just to make it more presentable as well. So hopefully you found this useful. This is the end of my presentation. If you did have questions, feel free to ask them now in the chat, or if you like, you can unmute yourself and ask them directly. Okay. Just a quick reminder before you guys head out, please, if you did find this information useful, you can find some more information on our YouTube channel. We have a playlist of PDs available to you on different things such as Zoom, Google Classroom, Google Forms, Nearpod. So there's quite a variety of lessons there, or of trainings we've had there in the past. So please check us out there. And yeah, other than that, thank you for joining. And you can reach me here if you do have any questions, whether it be on Google Sheets or Google Classroom, any of the other topics we've covered in the series of trainings we've done for you guys. This is the last one of the school year, and hopefully we get to do this again next year. If you guys are interested, please send us a message. You can send it to me here at jsanchez@computerwisekids.com. You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this was informative.